Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mike's DVDs and Blu-rays Collection. I'm your host Mike. Today I'm going to continue with another serious movie, so to speak. I mean, I know I like to keep stuff on my channel kind of semi-comic and not too serious and not too in-depth critically with stuff. I just want to briefly tell you a little bit about the movies I'm talking about and give you some insight into that movie and recommend stuff to you. So I thought with the month of February, it's Black History Month. I mean, you can watch these movies anytime, which I think is, holidays are kind of ridiculous anyways. Valentine's Day, for example, it's like, is that the only day you can tell your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend or significant other that you love them, and you bring them candy and roses and cards and stuff? You can do that any day. It's just kind of weird. It's just silly, really. But, if it gives me a moment to stop everything else that I'm doing and focus on some African American movies or actors or directors and kind of focus in on something, then okay, cool. So I thought with my channel, I would do that. I did a video on Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing already. It may not be a video that everybody's going to jump on immediately and stuff, but hopefully it sits back there and kind of builds up a little bit of, people come to it and everything. Because, love or hate Spike Lee, he is a gifted filmmaker. He's a gifted voice in the African American collective out, in the world, in this country. He is a voice in Hollywood for, Black Americans, filmmakers also and stuff. And his influence is undeniable and everything. And it's pretty cool that I'm old enough to have been able to experience his movies, one after another. I do have to say that, the first Spike Lee movie I ever saw was School Days. That was a movie I kind of forgot to mention in Do the Right Thing, was School Days. I remember seeing it on TV and stuff, and it was, it was to me, it was just one of the newer movies that they had on there and stuff, and it was different. It was different because it was so Afrocentric. It was very focused on that. But as a little kid, I think I was 12 when I first saw that movie. I liked it. I thought it was cool. This was the beginning of, rap music becoming a thing. I remember back then I was a diehard hard rock heavy metal person, in the late 80s and early 90s and stuff. And rap was new. MTV had something called Yo MTV Raps. It would, feature artists like Public Enemy and, some of the artists of that time and stuff. So I was familiar with Public Enemy. I liked Public Enemy because they were a hard edge, had truth. They shook things up a little bit. And so when, Do the Right Thing came out and it opens up with a Public Enemy song and it, focuses it's featured in the movie prominently, the music of Public Enemy. So it was kind of like, so it wasn't like I was, unaware of this or something. I knew what was going on in the music world and different things and stuff. So yeah, it was a very, the fact Spike Lee seemed like he was a guy in his own boat and floating out there by himself in the big Hollywood world at that time. He was a little guy that fought. He had the respect of many, many people, entertainers, sports figures, a bunch of people. He had the respect and everything and stuff. And a lot of times I think people get his respect for Black culture and Black people and everything. I think people get that mixed up with him kind of being a racist or something, like a reverse racism of some sort. I don't know. You hear interviews over all these years, since Do the Right Thing and stuff, and 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 it wasn't a movie made to shock people. It wasn't a movie to be like anti this or anti that or promote violence or anything. It was showing the two. Basically, how the movie ends, it ends with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King when they met. They wanted to work together to achieve something back then. But Malcolm X was assassinated in 1965, and then Martin Luther King was assassinated after that. So, it was kind of showing like people working together, but they also show that tension and the reality of the violence that's there in this country. And I think, and that was my point with that video, was to show that, it is just as timely now than it was then. I mean, now more so because we know more stuff that goes on every day in the country. I mean, back in 1989 when that movie came out, we didn't have any tons of examples of police brutality or this or that, not until Rodney King's, beating video came out in 91, 92 that set off the riots in California and all that stuff. So that brings us up to now 1992, and the movie I'm going to talk about is Malcolm X. And I have this on a Warner Brothers Blu-ray. I just wanted to clear up some things in that video. I said that was his next movie after Do the Right Thing was Malcolm X, but I was wrong about that. There was Mo Better Blues and then Jungle Fever in there and stuff. And those are two movies that I've only really saw maybe once or twice on TV, and I've never owned a copy of those. So I think I'm going to remedy that, and I'm going to find those and do a proper viewing of it and talk about them in the future. So just to say that, I'm sorry I was incorrect. It was like, it was in my mind. I was looking at it as a timeline as I was talking, and I just kind of, I just didn't see that. I guess I was thinking Jungle Fever came afterwards or something. I don't know. I think I got my years kind of skewed for a minute there. But anyways, let's stop blabbering on about that. Let's talk about Malcolm X. Now, this came out in 1992. And of course, there was controversy from the start. I mean, there was controversy just getting the movie made, period. It started with, Spike Lee really, brought up the point. He really, fought to be either him be the filmmaker of this movie or another black filmmaker. And I mean, at the time, he would be the obvious choice to lead this movie to success and be made and everything. So, I mean, it was originally going to be made by a director named Norman Jewison, who goes back to the 1950s. A very talented director, writer, director, producer. I mean, no problem there with him. But, the issue was, let's tell this story of a very important figure in black history. Let's let it be told by a black filmmaker. Let's have a black film crew. Let's do this the right way. He wanted to focus on that, and it really did bring a lot of views to that. It's like, why isn't there so many black people in the film industry and stuff, and everything. I mean, that's a whole nother story that I am not that qualified to go into with the political details of how mega corporations are run, and because Hollywood, let's face it, is a mega corporation that's, has a lot of money and stuff. So anyways, making this movie, they budgeted at a certain budget. I'm not going to, I don't have the exact figures, but they wanted it made for that. And Spike Lee came back later on and was like, we can't tell this story properly with this budget. So there was a lot of, the people that financed the film were like pulling the plug, basically. They were like, we're not going to give you any more money. We're not giving Warner Brothers any more money. We want this movie wrapped up. We want you to go get all the sound, editing, all that stuff fixed in like 2 weeks, and we want the movie put out there. And he was like, no, we can't do that. It's just, we can't do this. So, you know, it was said Spike Lee was paid $3 million for this project, to direct this project. And when it got to that point, he pulled out $2 million of his own money, of his own paycheck, and put it back into the movie. And then it came down to the point where he was, you know, I saw, there's an interview with him on the Charlie Rose show, which is a really good show that was on PBS. I guess it's still on. But he always talked to filmmakers that mattered. And he tells this story, this exact story I'm telling you, that he basically begged. He begged very prominent black entertainers and sports figures and professors and people that were affluent, that had the money, that were the movers and shakers in the world of, you know, I mean, he asked Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Cosby, a few more people, but he was asking, you know, it's like, we need some money. You need to donate to us, please. You know, if you believe in this, like I believe in this, and everything. And it was given to him. It wasn't a tax break for those people. It wasn't a this for those. It was mainly, this is a gift. We're giving you this money. Make your movie, finish it like it's supposed to be, and put it out. And that's basically what happened, you know, according to Spike Lee. I mean, he went on the record and said that back 1992. So anyways, so the movie finally gets wrapped up, and it's a huge movie. I think the first running print of it was 4 hours or 5 hours long. Of course, it had to be edited to where it's almost 3 hours now, or it's about at 3 hours long. So, you know, of course, they fixed it up. The director of photography, as was on all the other of his features up to that point, was Ernest Dickerson. I think this would be one of his. I think he worked with him again, but after this movie, Ernest Dickerson would go on to make the movie Juice, which was more of a crime tale and stuff, and he made that as a director. He started directing movies after that point. But I think he's come back to being cinematographer for movies and director, and he's usually a little bit of both. Very well respected professional in his job. So he basically worked with a lot of the same crew that he's been using. They got the actor Denzel Washington to star. He prepared for it for over a year by, you know, he lost weight. He really read up on the character. He fasted. He did a lot of stuff to get into the role for Malcolm X. He knew how important this role was going to be and what he brought to it. There was some similarities to the way Malcolm X looks and Denzel Washington. There were some similarities, but it kind of stops there, because then Denzel brings it, man. This is a tour de force for Denzel Washington. And then at the Oscars, when he was nominated, he famously lost to Al Pacino for Scent of a Woman, which, you know, hey, that's a great role. That was a very memorable, good role for Al Pacino. But, you know, that's not Al Pacino in The Godfather or Dog Day Afternoon or Carlito's Way or something, you know. This was him doing this one character, you know, and Denzel Washington was clearly the choice to win. He really deserved it. I mean, you can't make a Hollywood movie that's 3 hours long and the actor is really good, and normally they always win because they really, you know, deserve it. But anyways, it was, you know, kind of lost out on stuff. It didn't do as well at the box office as they thought it was going to do. It did well, but I don't think it wasn't a blockbuster like it needed to be to kind of recoup all the money to really show Hollywood that, yeah, we can do a serious movie about a famous black person and it be successful in their eyes, you know, in Hollywood money-wise eyes, if that's even a expression. But anyways, the movie, you know, opens, it kind of goes back and forth a little bit to his childhood, stuff like that. But it basically takes place, starts in the 1940s, where he's kind of just a young wild guy. Shows him, Spike Lee actually co-stars in it as one of his buddies, one of his friends, best friend in the movie. And they're basically wearing zoot suits in Harlem. And they're just living a carefree life, you know, young and just, you know, everything. And it just shows some, you know, his early, or where he was at then. He was getting into trouble. He was doing, you know, he was a bookie. He messed around with selling drugs, and there was prostitution elements, or, you know, maybe not prostitution, but just he had a lot to do with the seedier side of things, and got him in trouble. So about after the first hour, it kind of shows that part. You know, it kind of goes back and forth. I mean, when he was a kid, the KKK would attack their house and bust the windows out and try to scare this family away. Malcolm X's father was a very serious black minister or preacher. He talked about, you know, segregation, or he talked about pro-black stuff in this little town in the South back in the 30s, you know, late 20s, 30s. So he was a target to these hate groups there. I mean, his mother was a very light-skinned black woman, so she almost looked white. And there's a funny part in there where Malcolm X said, well, you know, my mother was so ashamed to be so white that she wanted to marry a very dark-skinned man so that her children would at least look black, you know, and stuff. You know, but, you know, it shows his mom, the trouble she endured, you know, after his father was basically murdered, you know, by these people, these hate groups, the people of the town, just like everybody had it in for the family, basically. So his mom tries to raise all the kids. She comes to a point where she can't. She basically loses her mind just because of all the horrible stuff that's happened to her. She's basically in a sanatorium. The kids are, you know, in orphanages. Young Malcolm gets put into a boys' home. He would steal and got in a lot of trouble and stuff like that. So once he got out of all that, he basically, you know, he was up in Harlem, moved up to Harlem, and was living his life, you know, going from job to job and doing this and that. And, you know, he's friends with the Spike Lee character. And it shows all the, you know, the involving ladder of stuff. And it gets up to about the first hour of the movie, stops about right as he goes to jail. And then once him going to jail was a defining moment in Malcolm X's life. That's where he would discover Islam, and it would change him as a man, you know, from the inside out. I mean, he was serious. He read. He made up for all the lost time, you know, that he just, you know, lost all this time that he could have been serious and studying, you know, Islam and everything like that. So it starts there, you know, out of prison. He starts, you know, writing and lecturing and talking and, you know, bringing awareness to, you know, the Muslim, the black Muslim. And then, you know, it goes into parts with, you know, Louis Farrakhan, different stuff, you know, what we know, you know, it's on an epic level. I mean, this movie's on an epic level. I mean, they filmed They filmed in Africa, some scenes. They filmed in Egypt, which was really cool. There's some really cool scenes of in a mosque. There's some epic scenes. I think it was like the first time, I forgot exactly what it's called, but it was like one of the first times, and probably the last time, that an American Eastern country would come in and be able to film all this stuff and everything. But see, Spike Lee really was able to get in there and get into those places and talk to the right people, and it really, I don't think the movie would have been on this level, this scale, if another director had done it. I think he brought to it levels that would have never been realized by another director, which, that's up to debate, but I feel that way. So anyways, so we basically go, into the story of Malcolm X. There's the women in his life. He was with a white woman for a very long time. It's really told in the first hour and stuff. It's really, the movie is kind of divided in 3 parts. It's like each hour of the movie is kind of the part. So the first part's basically his life, his early part of his life, and then the beginnings of Islam and who he was going to be. And in the end, it's mostly who Malcolm X is best remembered for, and, of course, his assassination and everything. But such a beautiful, epic movie. I mean, like I said, Denzel Washington just turned in a tour de force. I mean, just magnificent actor in this role. Is just phenomenal. Spike Lee, one of his best crowning achievements. I mean, up to that point, that was a huge epic. Along the lines of David Lean epic, of Lawrence of Arabia or something. This was big. This was a big, bold movie. But yeah, it tells the story, and and at the end, there's some of the parts of, like, who was behind the assassination of Malcolm X. Was the CIA or the FBI involved? Was Louis Farrakhan behind it? He was getting too big, and which is, it's all been well documented. There's those. Maybe more than just a conspiracy theory involved there. But according to Spike Lee, that's what he believes. He believes that Louis Farrakhan and possibly the FBI had something to do with why he was assassinated, because they were being monitored for years and years by the FBI, keeping tabs on them, watching these people, this group, So, but yeah, there's some just so many memorable scenes in this movie, and it's a shame it wasn't a hit, but a blockbuster. But it's almost too serious to be a blockbuster in a way, because what is a blockbuster? It's a crowd pleaser that makes a lot of money, And I don't think his movie was limited to just African American people to come out to the theaters to see. It wasn't limited to that. But I don't know, maybe the way it was marketed and stuff like that. There was many little controversies around it. There was some violence that broke out in some cities around people going to the movies to see it. There was different things like that. There was some drama started. But overall, this is one of the best. It probably is Spike Lee's best movie. I'm saying that only because of the epic grandness of this movie. Because a movie like this would never be made today. It would, for one, it'd be too expensive. Nobody would put the money up for something like this, unless an Amazon or somebody put up the money and it was only streamed. But as far as this being a huge, grand, widescreen movie that was meant to be seen in the theater, on the big screen, you probably wouldn't see something like this. Not done the way that he did it, with all the extras and all the costume design, the musical score. I mean, not to mention that. I mean, so many levels to this movie just makes it a really grand movie. And it's very rewatchable. I mean, yeah, it's a long movie. It's not something you can watch every day over and over. But it's something I can come back to at least every year or more. I mean, I can watch it anytime. It's that good. So, yeah, I just wanted to go over Malcolm X. Apart from it being about a famous, influential black figure in history, it is also just a well-made movie. I mean, the story of making Malcolm X is a really good story. I mean, do some research, look up some of the stories, listen to some of the interviews with Spike Lee at the time and some of the stuff going on and stuff. So it was a very, it was a big deal. It was a big deal in 1992 when it came out, because 92 to me started the new movement of young filmmakers in America. The Quentin Tarantinos, the Pulp Fiction came in and changed stuff, and then you had all these like indie movies and directors being directors again, Hollywood taking chances again, writers being writers, telling fresh stories and stuff. And Spike Lee got the jump on everybody by a few years, but I would say he was right there leading the pack as a new filmmaker. He was a black filmmaker, and now it's like, well, you can be a black filmmaker and tell a story, and it's going to happen. It's going to be made. It's going to be done. Now, that in the 90s, it was like it was just a watershed year or decade for filmmakers. So yeah, I just wanted to spotlight that, guys. Check this movie out. There's a really nice digibook Warner Brothers put out with that. It's the same artwork, but it's it expands on pictures and stories and everything in the digibook, kind of like the Color Purple one that I showed in an episode. Really nice digibook. I just have the regular edition, but it's available DVD, VHS, Laserdisc, Blu-ray. So it's out there, guys. Check it out. I do highly recommend it. Check out Spike Lee's work. Love him or hate him, he always gets you thinking, though. That's the thing, and that's what he would say would be, what he wants to do. He wants to get people to think. He wants people to be educated and learn this stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty big fan of Spike Lee. I mean, I'm always interested when he puts out something new. I got to play catch up though, because there's a bunch of movies that he's made over the years that I don't have copies of yet, and there's a few I haven't seen actually too. So, but anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope I didn't mess up the whole idea of this movie. I'm not exactly the most eloquent speaker, but I just wanted to tip my hat to it and say this is a great movie. Check it out. During this time of season, Black History Month, let's examine something and go back and think about it, and how relevant it still is to this day. It's not a movie of its time. It's not stuck in the 90s. It's still a movie that is just as fresh and exciting as it was when it came out in 1992. So that's my opinion. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Comment. Let me know, guys, what's your opinion on Malcolm X. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't already subscribed. And hit that bell so you're notified when I release a new video after you subscribe and everything. So check out my channel. I got a lot of videos, all kinds of different genres and kinds of movies and stuff. So until next time, guys, I'm Mike. Thank you for watching. Y'all be safe out there, and I will see you again in another episode. Peace out.